don't fight the fear. This is all psychological stuff that I'm talking about first before we get into the rest of it. But don't fight the fear. Let the fear wash through you. The first is breathe. Breathe. Like it's really, really hard. Um, it's really hard to think and execute, well, when you're overwhelmed by panic, or frustration or
Mhm.
emotion or anything like that. So the first step is actually take a step back and breathe. The second step, in my opinion, and this is sort of how I handle any crisis that I go through, is don't fight the fear. This is all psychological stuff that I'm talking about first before we get into the rest of it. But don't fight the fear. Let the fear wash through you,
Mhm.
right? Like and generally what I do with fear is I generally say, okay, so what if the worst happens, right? At the end of the day, um, sometimes our fear of the outcome is worse than the actual outcome itself, right? And that is not always the case, but in the vast majority of times, you know what? The day after, something terrible happened, I still woke up, the sun was still shining, and my mom called me and she told me she loved me. Like the important things all still happened and they're all still there. So when you sort of start with the mental, emotional, psychological aspect of this, take a step back, let that wash through you. Now just, like Mr. Miyagi or whatever, like just sort of say, okay, what do I need to do first? Right? And the first thing that you have to do is shore up your community, right? So many people, your communities are already there. That's fine. But remember that the dangerous thing is to trickle, trickle, trickle out. So I would start looking at my stack of resources, right? Resources include you, they include your instructors, they include any of the staff that you still have on, they include the software that you have. And I would start looking through that and I would say, what is giving me the best shot at keeping the people that I have? That's number one. And what can do that in a low cost, easy to implement way, um, that can just work, for me. So that's number one. Then number two is, how do I grow? Right? Because believe it or not, there are people that are actually growing, in this crazy, sort of period. Now, the part about, how do you keep your community, there's a whole lot of stuff analysis that we don't get into, like what does my pricing have to be, and all of that sort of stuff. But when you get to the place where you're like, I need to find more people, as well, like it's like I got to keep my people, I need more people. Again, sort of look at your resources and say, what is the optimal way and the least expensive way for me to get, those pieces, sort of together, so that that you're at least doing something, right? And the more that something can operate in the background and help you to, make that happen, now you can raise your head up. You've done the subsistence level thing. Raise your head up and think about, all right, this is where I'm going to push, you really, really hard. I'm going to push on the acquisition really hard in this way. I'm going to push more on the retention really hard in this way. So those are the big things, that I recommend. The last thing that I will say again is sort of more of a psychological thing. Fortune favors the bold. This is one of those situations where coming out the other side, those that survive it, honestly, even those that come in at that point in time, there's going to be a tremendous amount, um, of business to pick up, right? And the question is, how do you get through it all? And so many studio owners, um, with whom I speak, are afraid right now, right? And there's reason to be afraid. I understand it, etc. But think about it this way. Think about the analogy of a ceiling that's been falling in. So that the roof has sort of fallen in. You're standing there with your head sort of covered, and it's all just like raining down on you. It's raining down on you, and you're literally sitting there and you're saying, um, "I just need to last this. I just need to last." Right? Like that's sort of the attitude of most studio owners. Now, here's the problem: we've been in that position for months now, right? And we know that it's going to go for another 6, another 9, months before we start to emerge from it. You need to act now, right? You have energy reserves, and all the rest of that. Now, think about the analogy, right? If I stand there for another 3 months and my legs start shaking, my thighs start quivering, my arms start hurting because, I'm just holding up, all of this stuff or whatever, then when it comes time, when I realize that I actually have to do something different, like really different to get through here, I don't have the strength anymore. My legs are tired, my arms are tired, etc. So you need to act, you need to move, you need to think about it and just be like, you know what, I need to try something, and this is what I'm going to try. And you need to do that when you have the reserves, the mental, emotional, psychological, energetical reserves, to make something happen. And we'd like to believe that that something could be give Fit Grit a shot.
Hey everybody, Jessica LaChance here. Do you want more business education for your fitness studio or wellness business? Subscribe to our YouTube channel or our email newsletters, and we'll see you here soon.